Muy buenas tardes, queridos colegas de Sinaes. Es para LASPA un enorme gusto poder facilitar esta sesión para ustedes. Mi nombre es Angélica Natera, yo soy la directora ejecutiva de LASPA. No he tenido la fortuna de estar directamente con ustedes en persona en Costa Rica, pero pues esto es una nueva realidad, ¿no? Y no quería no tener la oportunidad de saludarles, darles la bienvenida y decirles que para LASPA esto precisamente es un momento de aprendizaje mutuo, donde nosotros también estamos aprendiendo de esta experiencia y de ustedes. Hoy tenemos con nosotros a Eric Masseur, quien gentilmente pues va a liderar la próxima hora y media esta sesión. Hoy estamos haciendo algo que consideramos también un primer experimento. Voy a ser muy cándida con esto. Nuestra querida colega Maya Evans está traduciendo al español y en consecuencia le pido a Eric que por favor hable un poquito más lento de su ritmo usual para poder entonces hacer esto de manera exitosa. A ustedes participantes, con todo el entusiasmo, aprovechen esta oportunidad y de nuevo, cualquier sugerencia hacia el futuro, compártanla con el equipo, que estamos para servirles y hacer esto cada vez mejor. Sin más preámbulos, quisiera dejar con ustedes a Eric.
Gracias, Angelica. Thank you, Angelica, and welcome to everyone. So I don't know if people are aware, there's an interpretation. You can either listen to me in English, or you can listen to the translation. You can suppress my audio and listen only to the translation, or you can hear my audio in the background and listen to the translation. This meeting is being recorded, and one of the things you may want to do is click on the participant button at the bottom. Right there at the bottom of the video, there's a participants button. You have the participant list. We are about 120 people here. At the bottom, you see a couple of icons. There's an icon of a raised hand if you want to ask a question. All the microphones are muted. Later on, you can ask a question verbally if you want. I suggest you don't raise your hand during the talk, but during the webinar, but you put your question in the chat. A number of the LASPAO staff are monitoring the chat, and they will answer your question. If you message me privately, I will not see it because I cannot talk and read the chat at the same time. So please message publicly, and somebody from LASPAO will be able to answer your question. So next to the raised hand are two buttons, a yes and a no. Just out of curiosity, how many of you are teaching online now? If you are, click yes. If you are not, click no. So I see only 12, 15, 16, and now they're going up. So open the participant list. You will need that list later. And then at the bottom of the participant list is a yes, a no, and a raise hand. Click yes if you're teaching online. Click no if you're teaching in the classroom. If you're not teaching anything, then don't click. So we have 140 participants. 32 people are teaching online. 3 people, a lot of people are typing C in the chat. Not in the chat. Participant list. So right there, there's a participant button. Should be somewhere there at the bottom. Click on the participant button. You'll see a list. At the bottom of the list is a yes, a no. There's also a go faster. One person wants me to speak faster. Okay, so I think it's safe to assume that most of you are teaching online. There's only 2 no's. And there are several people who want me to speak faster. Good. I will not go faster because it will be difficult with the simultaneous translation. So again, welcome. I'm happy to talk about the unprecedented transition we have made in the past few weeks. I ended my semester on Tuesday, and finally I have a moment to breathe. But I want to take this opportunity that I have with you to reflect on the situation that started 5 weeks ago, when I was told, it was on March, I think the 10th, I was told that I had 5 days to move my class online. Now I'm teaching a 75 student team and project-based class. It's a very different class from a normal class. It's not in an auditorium. You can see a picture of my classroom in the slide there. Students sit around round tables working on projects in teams of 5 students. It's impossible to lecture because students are, first of all, not facing in one direction. But on top of that, they're chatting, talking, making noise. It looks more like a kindergarten than a university class. And that's by design. I want it to be that way. So I was told, 5 days to move the whole class online, including the projects, students who are building things, and we had to find ways of transferring that entire course online. I'm not going to be able to talk about how I moved everything from the course online. I'm just going to talk about 2 parts of the course because I think they're most relevant for people who are in a similar situation, that they have to move the course online. Now, if you've heard me speak about education before, and I've been to Costa Rica a number of times, actually quite a few times, and I remember fondly a visit I had to the University of Costa Rica in San Jose, where I gave, I think, a long list of lectures. That when I talk about education, I like to see education as a 2-step process. The first step is the information transfer. And the second step is for the student to make sense of that information, to extract from that information the knowledge, the mental models, which make it possible to apply what they've learned into a new situation. And in most classes, not my class, but most classes, the transfer of information takes place on campus, and it is in the form of a synchronous, meaning everybody together at the same time, lecture, una clase magistral. And the pace is set not by the student, not by the learner, but by the instructor. And then the students are sent home to develop an understanding. That could be homework, it could be study, it could be anything. That's completely asynchronous. Students can do that whenever they want. And it's the pace is not set by the instructor, but by the student. Close to 30 years ago, I discovered that this model didn't work very well. And I decided that rather putting in my effort in the information transfer, I should put my effort in helping students make sense of the material. But then that's not true for most of my colleagues at Harvard and in many other places. Maybe for some of you, neither. Maybe for some of you, you're still giving lectures. So on March 10, we were told, you have to move off the campus. So regardless of what you do on campus, that has to be moved away. So for my colleagues who were teaching traditional lectures, what happened was essentially that we use Zoom, like you're using Zoom right now, to have a lecture online, still synchronously, by the instructor. And of course, in my case, since I have students from all over the world, I have students from Ghana, I have students from Berlin, I have students from London, I have students from the East Coast of the United States, I have students from the West Coast of the United States, I have students from New Zealand. It's impossible really to do that synchronously once they leave campus. So most of my colleagues hit the record button, very much like we're recording this webinar, which, by the way, the recording is not going to be very useful. So the colleagues who are missing this, unfortunately, won't be able to benefit from it because the whole point is to interact with each other. Right now, you're listening to me in just a little bit, we're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to interact. So what do you do in that case? Well, you hit the record button, and now we have the information transfer asynchronously in the form of a recorded lecture. And in the process, and you know, I say here still at the pace of the instructor paced. Why? Because when a student watches a video, it's still, the information transfer is still determined by the instructor, not by the students. And yes, you could pause the video. You could listen and then pause the video and then think. But it turns out most students don't do that. In fact, when they watch recordings, most students put the playback speed at 1.5 or 2 or 2.5 even. But more importantly, what is happening now, and this is happening in many classes around the world, is that the student is alone for all parts of the educational process, alone watching the recorded lecture and alone studying. I think this is a bad idea, even in the best of times, because deep down learning is a social process. It's not an individual process. But in times of social isolation, as we're having right now, it's particularly bad. Students already are not benefiting from interacting with each other on campus in extracurricular activities, meeting their friends. On top of that, they're also completely isolated and alone in the educational process. This is not what I'm going to be presenting to you today. Instead, I'm going to present a very different model, a model where the information transfer is self-paced rather than instructor-paced and is asynchronous. And the sense-making, both of these are online, of course, and the sense-making is led by the instructor in a synchronous fashion. And this could possibly be asynchronous too, if you want. But most importantly, both parts of this process are fully interactive. In fact, I use two evidence-based approaches to facilitate these two methods. So let's explore these two steps. That's essentially the program for this online demonstration that I'm going to give you. Let's explore how we can transfer information asynchronously online. And let's also then, at the end of this webinar, discover how we can foster understanding or foster interaction and discussion under the guidance of an instructor. And we'll do that using two free tools. So there's no cost involved, and you can start using that tomorrow if you like. So we'll begin with the information transfer. And for the information transfer, we're going to explore the use of a tool called Perusal with two L's. The English word perusal means to study attentively. This means everybody studying everything together. Now, I did not design this tool for online teaching. I designed this tool when I started to design the class I just told you about, which you still see illustrated in the background there, this project and team-based class. When I designed that class, I decided that I didn't want to lecture at all anymore. In fact, it's impossible in that classroom to be lecturing. So I had to find another way of getting the students to take the responsibility for the information transfer. And I'd already tried different techniques, and right around the time that I designed that class, we stumbled on this idea of making the information transfer an interactive social activity. You'll understand more what that means in just a second. So Perusal is a text-based social learning platform. You could embed videos if you want, but I believe that the disadvantage of video is that it's paced by the instructor rather than paced by the student. If as a student you're reading a text, you are in control of the information transfer pace. So if you want, it's a social e-reader. And if you have short videos, you can embed them in the text so that students can watch them in the context of text in Perusal. And the main reason, again, for developing this platform was so that I did not have to read the book to the students in the classroom. It works beautifully. I'll give you some information about that later on. And it turned out that when we had to move our course online, having that platform already in my class made it exceptionally easy to transfer my course online. Now, I forgot to tell you one thing. So we're going to explore these two steps, the information transfer and the sense-making step. I'm only going to focus on the how, because I want to make it possible for you to start using this in your class whenever you're ready to teach. I'm not going to spend much time motivating the why. There's plenty of information available online to say why we're doing what we're doing. And also, I'm not going to show you the evidence, the research results that show that it works better. What I'm going to do is that at the end of this webinar, I'm going to give you a link to a document that has more information on the why and how well it works. So here's what I want you to do with me. I want you to create a course on Perusal. I'll tell you how. And at the same time as you create your course, I will create my course. And then after creating your course and creating an assignment, you will join my course as a student so that you get the student experience as well. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take the Zoom window, go out of full screen, and put the Zoom window on one side of your screen. And then I want you to open your browser on the other side of the screen. So the Zoom window on one side and your browser on the other side. And in the browser, type in app.perusal.com. If you already know about Perusal and you have an account, then log in and wait. I'm going to help first the people who do not have an account. And at some point, we'll all join together. So if you have an account, log in and wait. If you don't have an account, then come along with me. So point your browser at app.perusal.com as shown here. And then there are two ways to register. One is to use your social media account here at the top. But if you don't want to do that, you can also register. It's very quick. You only have to put in, I think, 4 pieces of information. So either sign in through Twitter or Facebook or Google, or click at this register link at the bottom to register. After you enter the information to register, you will see a screen that looks as follows, giving you either an option to create or enroll in a course or create a club. I want you to select create or enroll in a course, create a course. And if you already have an account, then at the top left of your screen, of your browser, there should be a button that says create course. You may want to click on that. I'm going to do that in a second too, so you might wait as well. For the new people, you will first be asked if you're a student or an instructor, please select instructor. Even if you're an instructor, you can always join my course as a student or anybody else's course as a student later. So select I am an instructor, and then select for students to access directly at perusal.com. The other option is to integrate Perusal into your learning management system. That's how I use it typically. I have my courses through our LMS, our learning management system, which is Canvas. But if you use Blackboard or Moodle or Desire to Learn or any of these learning management systems, you can integrate Perusal directly into the learning management system. The students don't need an account in Perusal. Any data from Perusal goes back to your learning management system. But since we have different learning management systems, not everybody will have the same, we're going to not do that, and we're just going to do for students to access directly at Perusal. You can give the course a name, and then you will have to enter your institution. I think there are quite a few institutions that are listed, but certainly not all. If your institution, if your institution does not show up here, then please type example space institution. Example space institution. And please send an email to Perusal support@perusal.com, so that we can add your institution to our list. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides, and instead I want to share my browser so that I can create my own course now, because I need to do that too. So this is what you see if you have already an account. I'm going to click create a course, and then for students to access directly at Perusal, and now we're all on the same page. So I'm going to call this webinar, pardon me, 1 second, webinar Sinaes, I'll call it, webinar Sinaes, there we go. My institution is Harvard, so I type in Harvard, and indeed, Harvard University is listed here. If your institution is not listed after typing your name, just type in example institution. Remember that, example space institution. Course start date, we'll do today. Course end date, whatever you want, let's say tomorrow. And then it says enrollment estimate, leave that at 20. I see that we're 183 or so I'll type in 180. Target group size, leave it at 20. Leave everything else the same and just click. I'll explain what that is, and just click Save Changes. Congratulations, you have created a course on Perusal. That's how easy it is to create a course. So now let me show you how to create an assignment. But before I do that, let me point out this 1, 2, 3. Step 1 is to get your students to join your course. And you should have a code like this, which is your last name. In my case, it's M-A-Z-U-R, my last name, and then 5 letters. That's all you need to give to your students in order for them to join your course. I'm going to show you later, don't worry about that right now, but I'm going to show you later how to use that code to join my course. But first, let's make your course. So the next thing is to choose the documents that you want to add. So that's what we're going to do. And then the last step is to create an assignment. We're going to do these 2 steps. So let's click on adding a document. If you click on that arrow, so let me go back here for a moment. If you click on the arrow to the right of 2, it's the same thing as clicking the Documents tab here at the top. You end up in the Documents page, which is empty because we have not yet added documents. You can add books. You can add PDF files. You can add music score. You can add maps. You can add web pages. There's a lot of things you can add. What we're going to do now is each of us is going to add a small PDF document from your computer. So please select that option, Documents from my computer. And I suggest that you navigate to a small file. In fact, the file I'm going to choose is about 0.5 megabyte, as you can see, long. It's an article from the New Yorker that appeared, I think, 2 or so years ago. You may want to upload anything, a small article, a bill that you have received. It doesn't really matter because your course is not a real course at this point. It's just a test course. But try to find a small PDF file that you can upload. As soon as you do that, you will see that the document is being uploaded. And not only is it being uploaded, it is also being converted to an HTML5 format. HTML5 is the language of the internet. And that makes it possible for you to take a text which is copyright protected. For example, it could be a manuscript that you're writing for a book. You don't want your students to take that manuscript and post it online so everybody can have it. It'll be rendered as an HTML5 that looks identical to the original, but that cannot be printed, that cannot be saved, unless you give explicit permission to the students to do that. While this is converting, and it may take shorter or longer depending on the complexity of your document, let's quickly explore another option. If you, one more thing. It's not just one document that you can upload. You can upload as many documents as you want. For example, last fall, I was teaching a seminar-based course, and I basically had folders, one folder for each week. And in each folder, I had 2, 3, or 4 different articles from professional journals that my students had to read and annotate and discuss. So you can have more than one document. It can be many different documents. It can be a textbook supplemented by documents. It can be different textbooks. There are many different options. I'm going to briefly show you how you would do a textbook, and this includes OpenStax textbooks. There are 2 ways of doing OpenStax textbooks. One is to do them through the book section and select OpenStax. The other one is to download the PDF from the OpenStax website and then upload the PDF through Perusal. But even commercial books are available. As you can see, in the US, we have about 250,000 titles. I don't know how many it is in Costa Rica. It depends on the agreements with the publishers. And if a book you really want to use is not there, please let us know and let the publisher know, and we'll make sure that we get some agreement with the publisher. As you can see, we have quite a few publishers, including some Spanish-speaking publishers that have made their books available on Perusal. So you can also search for an author. I'm going to type in my last name, Masseur. Here are 2 books I wrote. The other books I didn't write. I wrote this one and I wrote that one. But this one looks interesting here. It's the Inferno by Dante Alighieri, the famous Italian Renaissance writer. So suppose I want to use this book in the class. I would click on it and then request title. As soon as you hit request title, you as the instructor will get access to the book. No payment needed. The students, however, have to pay either a license fee or it has to go through the library of the university in order to be sure that the publisher, in this case it's Macmillan, and the author, whoever it is, this Masseur, not me, another Masseur, gets paid for their work. Okay, so let's not hit request title. Let's click this X here at the top. By now, your document should have converted, and you will see something as you see here. If I open the document, you can open your document. You will see that the document looks very much the same as the document you uploaded, including figures and other things. Going back to the document, so click on whatever name you give to your course and then a document. Rather than opening it, we can create an assignment. So I'm going to create an assignment for you, and you may want to create an assignment for your fictitious students. So click on Assign. And the first thing is that we have to decide on what content to assign. Right now, there's only one article, so I don't have any choice but to choose that one. I can either do the entire document or I can assign a range of pages. I'm going to have you read part of this, but we won't get very far. So I'm only going to give you the first 3 pages to read, page 1 through page 3. And I can add another part. I could say read also page 9 through 10 or whatever, but I'm not going to do that. Then next step, the deadline. So I'm going to make it due today at, what time is it? It's 3:30. I'm going to give you until 3:50 to read it. And the assignment that will be webinar assignment. I could give you instructions. There are more settings, but I'm not going to give you any more settings. So I'm just going to hit click Save Changes, and there it is. I have my assignment made. And notice that I immediately get statistics. I can see that none of you have completed any work, which is not surprising because you haven't joined my course yet. That will come. I can get analytics, I can get lots of information here, but as you haven't joined my course yet, that can't have happened. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite you now to join my course. So what I want you to do is I want you to click on Perusal here in the top left. So click on Perusal. We've done create a course. You've all done that now. If you create a course and you want to use it the next year again without the students, you can copy a course. We're not going to do that now. That will be next year. Instead, I want you to click on enroll in a course. So now you are a student enrolling in a course and you're going to join my course. So the code for my course is in the chat. So it's Masseur, M-A-Z-U-R -CQD2U. It's in the chat. And then click Save Changes. And then wait for a moment. I'm not going to click Save Changes because I'm the instructor. I don't want to be a student in my course. I want to be the instructor in my course. So I'm going to hit Cancel. But you should hit Save. So let me go to the course and let me actually open the assignment. And as you join my course, I will see your, so Natalie Paniagua Lopez, congratulations, you're the first one to join. And we have somebody else, Dr. Angel Espinoza Mora, and Marco Segura is joining. So you might not see the same thing as I do. I want everybody to join, so I'm going to wait here for a moment. And as people join my course, and again, if you forgot how, click on Perusal, then click on Enroll in Course, and then put the code that is in the chat, Masseur, my last name, -CQD2U, and click Save Changes. And once you're in the course, you will see an assignment. And just open the assignment. We have more people, but this is certainly not 194 people. So I'm going to wait a little longer here to see more people. I don't know what. Oh, good. We should see many more people there. So enter the assignment, open the document. If you don't know how, just see assignment and then click on April 30 webinar assignment. And if you still don't know how to join the course, click on Perusal. Then click Enroll in the course. And then enter the course code and click Save Changes. Third tile here, create course, copy course, enroll course. We want to enroll the course. And in order to get there, you just click on Perusal. This term here at the top left. Good. Okay, so my list has gotten very long now. It's at the bottom. I'm still there, but soon I may be displaced. I see many people whose name I also see in the participant list on here. That's great. You will not see as long a list, and the reason is the following. Perusal puts you in groups of 20. That's the setting I did. I mean, you could make the groups larger, you can make them smaller, but it puts it in groups of 20 because research showed that with 20, the interaction is optimal. Obviously, if you make the groups really, really small, there are simply not enough students to interact with each other. If you make the groups really, really large, as you will see, it becomes very quickly very overwhelming. So this article is an interesting article, especially in the current political climate. I think it's very interesting. It appeared in the New Yorker in 2017, so 3 years ago. And it's essentially an article about why facts don't change our mind. And I think it's something we see more and more every day around us. So let me show you what Perusal does. And before you jump in, just observe me for a little bit, and then I'll let you loose on the article in just a second. So I mean, this title, think about it. If I highlight it, what happens is it opens a chat window, which is very much like the chat on Facebook or LinkedIn or on your phone or on your computer. So I can highlight something, and then it opens this chat window, and then I can type in something. For example, don't we see this all the time around us? Now, if you look here, you will not see my highlight, nor will you see the chat, because I haven't hit return yet. But if I hit return, the question sticks, and you should be able to see the highlight. So what I suggest you do is that you click on this highlight, which will open the chat on your computer, and that you respond to my question in English or in Spanish. Entiendo español, pero no hablo mucho. Notice that my notification tray, there was a note that appeared here on the left too. I don't know if you saw that, but the notification tray is indicating that there's a message for me. So I can click on it, even if I am on a totally different paper. And as you can see, Maureen Valverde Granados responded a few seconds ago, constatamente here. So I can click on that and immediately jump to her response. Now, and suppose I was not online. If I was not online, then I can go to my email, and my email, there will be a message waiting for me saying Maureen and all the others have responded to me. And I can then respond to the email, and magically, really completely magically, my email response would have been inserted in this chat. A couple more things. In Facebook, you have like buttons. We don't have like buttons, although there are a couple of people who put thumbs up in the chat. We have a question mark button and a checkbox. If the question mark is highlighted, it means this is a question. And if anybody replies to me, I will get notified. I see that several other people have now clicked this question mark. And if somebody replies, then that person, let's say that one of you clicks on this, then you will be notified too. So if you clicked on here and somebody else replies, your notification tray will also light up, which is a wonderful way of getting, first of all, good questions to bubble up, and also pulling students back into a discussion. You can insert, as you can see, if we go all the way to the bottom here, you can format the text, but you can also use LaTeX for mathematical notation. You can use emoji. You can use snippets of code for computer science people. You can insert an image, an HTML link, movies, and you can post anonymously if you don't want your name to be visible to others. The other icon is, this is a good answer. This helps me. This is a great answer. So, for example, somebody said here, Moodle works in similar ways. Yes, Moodle works in similar ways, but does not have the social document annotation feature. But if you see something that you really think is a great answer, you can click on it. I am the instructor clicking on it, but maybe some other people can click on it too. So go to Laura Ramirez's answer to my question, which is, you have to scroll down. You have to scroll down a lot. But you can see it's upvoted by the instructor, so there should be a tab there. And I can see other people clicking on other answers. The more people click on it, the higher the counter in front. So this means that good questions, and don't we all know that really good students do not just give good answers. They give good questions. They ask good questions. In fact, I think it's often more illustrative of how good a student, what the questions are that that student asks, than the answers they give. So this is a way of letting good questions bubble up and letting good answers bubble up. Let me show you one other feature, or maybe two other features before I let you loose on this, and then you can play with it as much as you want for a few minutes. I'm going to give you actually an assignment. Read the second paragraph, no, the third paragraph here, where it says that, as is often the case in psychological studies, the whole thing was a setup. You know, is that not bordering on the unethical? And I can actually, if I want somebody specific to answer this, I can type the @ symbol, like I'm doing now, and the first few letters of the name. I know that Christian Espinosa of Las Pau is online, and I would love to have his answer on it. So if I type the @ symbol and then CRI, it shows me everybody whose name has the letter CRI in there. Christian is indeed there. So I click on Christian's name, and if I hit return, even if he is asleep now, he will get a notification in his notification tray and in his email. So Christian, maybe you can quickly answer that question. So just click on your notification tray and answer, and as soon as Christian answered, my notification tray will light up. We're here, and he says, totally agree. I can click on it and it jumps straight there. So you see how you can interact with each other in context, right? In the context of a text. So a few more things here, and then I'm going to give you an assignment. The first one is this: the text cursor works well for. I want to close this. Works well for text, right? I can select text, but it doesn't work well for figures, right? If I have a question about what's represented here, I cannot really select any text. So there's another cursor here at the top called Annotate Figure. Yeah, and I can annotate part of the figure and say, poor guy, isn't this like torture? Or I can drop a pin by just clicking on a spot and say, is this an anchor, for example, right? So you can not only annotate text, you can also annotate the figure. So here's what I want you to do. Click back on text, because that's the one you will probably be using the most. See this menu here at the top that says all comments? I'm seeing all your comments. So it's starting to get busy here, as you can see. I want you to select my comments, which are your comments, so that you only see your own comments. And in that case, you will probably not see as many. I can see the one on the head, the one on the anchor, and that one. And I placed another one here, which Christian answered. What I want you to do is I want you to read the first page or so of this article and think about the content of the article and pose a question or make a comment. I want you to at least post one question and one comment. So I'll give you 2 minutes to do that. Go ahead. Everyone, one question, una pregunta, and one comment. So be sure not to sit there and not do anything because you'll get a very bad grade for your participation. Read the article and post a question. At least one question. 2 questions would be better. I can see that not many questions are there yet, so I encourage you to highlight some text and ask a question, a good question. Okay, which instructions should I repeat? So what I want you to do is I want you to read this first page. I want you to be sure that at the top it says my comments, not all comments, but my comments. And then I want you to read this first page. And wherever you can ask a question, like my question here. So highlight anything that you want to ask a question about. Enter your question in the text, my question here, and then hit return. If you don't hit return, the question will not stick. Try to do that once or twice. Many people keep adding to my question. Don't do that. Add your own questions. Anywhere in the text. And remember, good students ask good questions. Okay, so hopefully we have a few more comments. Now let's see. Oh, good, very good. So here's what I want you to do for the last minute. For the last minute, I want you to go back to this menu, and instead of my comments, I want you to select all comments. Notice that in my case, almost everything has been highlighted. It's very dense, see? People have started reading. I mean, some people have not gotten completely to the end, but there are lots of, so that's why we don't want 186 people, because that's how many participants we have right now in one document. That's why in your case, you'll see fewer. If you quickly want to see all of the conversations, click on this second button from the top on the right side. So click on that. And you can see all of the conversations. And as you highlight, so we're on page 2 here, you can see where they are on the page. Right? So find a question that you want to react to. Look at this one, for example. La experiencia por encima de la teoría. And you may want to, oh, this is not what I want here, sorry. And you may want to add a response. You don't have to respond to Sergio here, but find some question you want to answer to. And if somebody answers one of your questions, you will see your notification tray light up. What you may also want to do is you may want to go somewhere and say, ¿Cuál era el objetivo de esta segunda investigación? And you can type in that, you know, I'm sure at and then let's type in here, Maria Ventura. Sorry, Maria, I'm going to pull you in here. I can answer this. So, and as I hit return, Maria Ventura will see her notification tray light up. Maria, you can click here now, click on your tray, and you will see that I have pulled you in. So you can click on it, open this, and you can respond. So try to answer somebody else's question, and also try to invoke somebody in this webinar who you know is in the webinar, so that you can get a feel for the interaction. And right now the interaction is synchronous, right? Because we're all here at the same time. What we want to do in reality is do this asynchronously, but that would take too much time. So this is not quite a complete mirror of what would happen in real life. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to answer somebody else's question. Click on this icon, find a question. And I can see that quite a few questions already have been answered, right? Look at that. This is great. But there are still many questions that have not been answered. So try it and try to invoke somebody else by using the @ symbol. Good, I'm glad to see. These are, so here somebody's asking for me to give an answer. Let's see. Oh, that's a very good question. And in fact, you know, I've always pushed for cooperative work. By the way, it's really interesting. This is a really interesting article. I urge you to read this article in its entirety, because you know, you especially, you know, when you're trained in the sciences, you tend to think facts are facts, and evidence is evidence. And why is it that in face of evidence people don't change their minds? So it has a really good explanation of why in primitive societies, and you know, I'm sure that our genes encode the behavior that has evolved many years ago. Why it's important to stick to opinions sometimes rather than facts, and we see this in politics all the time nowadays. It's really scary. Anyways, you have an idea now. I'm gonna ask you to stop now. I'm gonna show you a few more quick things. If I go to assignment expired, I can see that significantly more work was done. Right? I see that 61.1% has done some work. 38.9% has done nothing. Bad for you. You're not going to get any credit for this. But those who have done some work will get some credit. I can see who has been very active here. So Carol, for example, has been very active. And Heidi has been extremely active with 8 comments, and Catalina. So I get an impression of which students are the students who are engaged in my classroom. But there are lots of other analytics I can get. I get the distribution of grades, which I am sorry is not very good. Everybody got a 0 here, including the people who did some work, because it was not yet enough to convince the artificial intelligence algorithm behind it, the machine learning algorithm, that there was true engagement with the text. But I can look at, you know, which pages have people spent the most time reading. I can look at an activity by student. Notice that some students have already some annotations. I can get all of that here, which reminds me that I completely forgot to tell you one important thing. So there's a grade book. And right now, unfortunately, we're not doing that well. But if I click on a certain grade, I can see how many annotations were placed, what the total number of annotations submitted on time was. So this annotation came in too late. just after the 350 cutoff. What the quality was, and I just realized that I forgot to tell the program that you would annotate in Spanish. So it's looking for English, which is why this is all remaining 0. So you collect a lot of information on your students, and you can feed that back into your learning management system. But I forgot to tell you one really important thing, which is in settings. In settings, which you will not see as a student in my course, but if you go back to your course, you can, and you go to scoring at the top, there are 2 grading schemes. One is annotation content only, and the other one is the recommended one, which is a holistic one. Unfortunately, the annotation only is the default and not the holistic. So I strongly urge you in your courses to always click holistic. In that case, it does not only look at what your students write, it also looks at their interaction with the text, the platform, and other students. And that also factors in. That's much more difficult to game, to cheat, let's say. In fact, it's impossible. Whereas this one, you could just copy random text and not think very deeply. So I highly recommend you choose the holistic grading scheme. So I don't know. I don't think that's going to make any difference for this assignment. It has recalculated all of the grades now. But if we look at the analytics, I don't think, oh, look at that. There are some people who have gotten some grades. So it's no longer everybody who has a 0. We have a number of students who are in this category of 1s. And if we look at the grade book here, we can see that there are people who have now a 1 rather than a 0, and I get much more information. Also information on their interaction with the text and how they've interacted with other students. Okay, so that's all I really wanted to show you for Perusal, because I have a little bit more to tell you about. So I'm going to go back to my presentation slides here. And why is it that Perusal works? It works because it's a social connection in context. You just saw the fun it was to interact with each other and with the text. And you say, well, I could do this in Moodle, or I could do this in Piazza, or I can do this in a discussion forum, but it's not in the context of the reading, right? If I told you, okay, you have to read this article in a New Yorker and ask questions about it and post it in a discussion forum, then I'd have to go back and forth between the article and the discussion forum. On page 2 of the article, he writes, blah, 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 blah. Does somebody understand? Now, with Perusal, it is in the context. But the other thing is it motivates participation. If, as a student, you wait and the rest of your class start asking questions, you will get notified, and you'll get an email from Perusal that says, hey, most of your classmates have already started working on their assignment, and several of them have asked you for your opinion. And then with one click, it brings the student into the discussion. As I said, there's a machine learning analysis of engagement. And one other thing that I did not show you is something called the confusion report, where the program will tell you, here are the 3 topics or 4 topics that the students have the most questions about, and here are some of their representative questions on those topics. So rather than looking at each and every annotation of your students, you can just go to the confusion report and get a feeling for what it is that the students are confused about. So Perusal is free. No payment is needed whatsoever. And many textbooks are actually free until the summer. If you're already using a book in your course and the students have that book, they can use it for free in Perusal. Research, and not only at Harvard, but at many institutions, shows that using Perusal, nearly 100% of the students complete their reading assignments. In my class, it's about 97%, but that's true at many other institutions where we've looked at completion of assignments. And most importantly, research has shown that students who actively are engaged on Perusal do better in their classes. And again, this is not true just at Harvard. at Ohio State, at University of Central Florida. A number of different institutions have shown that there's a strong correlation between students' behavior on perusal and their performance in the classroom. So here are the documents you can use as perusal. It can be a PDF, a Word, HTML, or an EPUB document, completely free. You can use any open access material, such as OpenStax textbooks or any open access material online. You can use, if you teach computer science, you can upload source code, and it will highlight the syntax of the source code in many different languages. If it's a book, a commercial book from a publisher, then you can either have an institutional license or you can have your students buy the book directly through Perusal. And usually the price of the book in Perusal is significantly lower than that in a bookstore. But most of all, a lot of books are free until the summer. And if you want to know how to license commercial material, don't ask me because I don't know too much about it, but you can email support@perusal.com. This is a partial list of publishers that are making their textbooks available for free until the summer, just to help out with the COVID-19 pandemic. So that was the first part. Let's spend 10 minutes, and we won't spend more than 10 minutes, on the second part. Once my students have read, how do I get them to have the aha moments, to understand the material? So for that, I use a technique that I developed actually 30 years ago, or 29 years ago. It's almost 30 years, called peer instruction. I know I was in Costa Rica to talk about peer instruction. I remember being in a large auditorium on the campus of the University of Costa Rica in San Jose, and we were doing the interactive teaching. I developed this never imagining that I would be speaking about it, even less imagining that I would be using this online. And I will show you how beautifully it works online. So what is peer instruction? Again, I realize I'm not really motivating the approach, but the handout that you will get at the end will explain the details. Instruction, or peer instruction, is an interactive teaching method that teaches through questioning. So the most important thing is it promotes thinking. So I see that there's a question here that was forwarded to me. How can I help my students with virtual anxiety? I'm not sure what virtual anxiety is. I presume anxiety using online tools, or to me, the word virtual anxiety means not a real anxiety, but a virtual anxiety, which I don't know what that exactly is. So maybe we can postpone the question till the discussion, which we'll have in about 10 minutes. So as I said, it promotes active thinking. So this is what I'm going to have you do. I'm going to have you experience peer instruction by answering a question on your own. I'll have a question that you will have in just a second. I need to go to my browser and release the question. I just realized I forgot to do that. And so after you answer that question, I will put you in groups, and you will end up in groups with probably people you don't know, but that's okay. That's okay. You will introduce yourself. So first say, hi, I'm Ana Maria, and I teach at this or this institution in Costa Rica. But then I want you to discuss the question. I want you to ideally find somebody who has given a different answer than you have to the question. And I want you to discuss with the person why you think your answer is correct and that person's question is incorrect. So you will go into that group in a breakout room in Zoom, and then I will ask you to vote a second time, and you will come back into the main room. And then we'll talk about this method a little bit more. So please go to this browser window, paulf.com/ericmasseur615. And there's a question that talks about the confirmation bias. As you notice probably, the article that you read, and I hope you read it. I asked you to read it, talked about confirmation bias. And the question is, are scientists less influenced by confirmation bias than non-scientists? In other words, if you show a scientist facts, they change their minds. So select an answer. pollf.com/Eric Masseur. 50% of people says, what is confirmation bias? Oh, it's a little bit lower now. It was in the article. And in a moment, I will put you in a breakout room. So we have answer A, answer B, and answer C. They're all there. Now we have more A's and B's than C. That's good. So, and we will have a good discussion, I think. So if you answered A, find somebody who answered B and try to convince that person that you're right and he or she is wrong. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms. If you do not go to the breakout rooms, you'll talk to me. I will talk to you in English, okay? Because my Spanish is not good enough. So I urge you to go to your breakout rooms. I may visit 1 or 2 breakout rooms. There we go. Okay, well, welcome back. People called me into a breakout room, and the discussion was not very lively there. Maybe in part because people didn't understand the question, which is okay. You could, if there had been somebody who would have known about confirmation bias, they could have taught one another. But I was in another room where people are actually very lively and talking to each other, just like, you know, they would be in a classroom if they had been sitting next to each other. And I don't know how to share the results of the poll because this is not the software I usually use in my classroom. But I can tell you that at the first time, most people had A, that, you know, scientists are less susceptible than non-scientists, but the distribution has changed right now, and it's more like 50-50. Also, there are far fewer people who say what is confirmation bias. But anyway, the talk is not about that. The talk was to show how you can get people when they're at home and separate from each other to talk to each other. So let me go back to my slide. So the way I do it in my actual course is that for an hour or so, I ask a question, I give students a little bit of time to think about it, I poll them, then I send them in breakout rooms where they discuss and teach each other, then I poll them again, and then we wrap up with an explanation that can either come from me or it can come from one of the participants in the class. By the way, this is a question that has no right answer. We don't know. We'd have to do the experiment. And I don't think there has been any experiment testing scientists versus non-scientists and see who is more susceptible to confirmation bias. But in the case of a question with the right answer, you could do an experiment, you can do a demonstration. In fact, even during this time of social isolation and lockdown, I did some demonstrations here at home in front of the students using optics and glasses filled with water. I mean, it was very simple, but it was still a demonstration to settle an argument. And essentially, I repeat this cycle until the time is up. the reason that peer instruction works, and again, more information at the end of this webinar, is that because it engages students to think, and it individualizes the learning in the sense that student A can help student B. Student C can help student D, even though B and D have two very different problems. And yes, I could try to give one or two explanations, but I cannot try 50 different explanations at the same time. In a certain sense, it becomes a parallel process. Peer instruction has shown, if you go to Google's scholar.google.com and you type in peer instruction, you will find 10,000 or more articles about peer instruction in all kinds of disciplines, from veterinary medicine to nursing to art history to the sciences. And many of those articles show significant improvement in learning outcomes. But what is truly exciting is that it works well online. My students the teams, in fact, are spread out over the globe. So I have a student in Ghana working with a student in Boston, with a student in Texas. And they get together in the breakout room and they talk, and then they come back to the main room, and they go back to the breakout room and they talk, and they come back in the main room. It is absolutely amazing to see how it can engage students who are not co-located in the same spot. And the other thing is it beautifully integrates with Perusal, because you can take the questions that emerge from Perusal and use those for a discussion in class, online. So this is what I wanted to present to you. I want to take another minute or two to muse about what's going to happen when we go back to campus, if we go back to campus. One option would be to move the transfer of information back to campus, but I never did that, so I'm definitely not going to do that. Maybe some people will. I don't think there's much reason to do that. For the following point, I'm going to move the sense-making part back to campus. So I'm going to end up with the hard part, the sense-making, on campus with me present, and the easy part through Perusal left to the students on his or her own. Now that's very different from the original method, from where we started. I need to mute, I have some feedback here. Because if we look at the old method, it was the easy part that was done at the university, the information transfer, essentially the instructor reading the book to the student. And then the hard part, the understanding, the making sense of the information, was left to the students on their own. So I think that anybody who makes that transition online is not very likely to go back to this old method, which dates back to the Middle Ages. Now, I didn't tell you how I moved all the other components online, the project, the tutorials, the assessment, the homework and the experimental activities. But I have to tell you that as I started moving that online, I started to think about the difference between synchronous parts of the educational approach, meaning everybody together at the same time, and also the difference between instructor-paced and student-paced. Instructor-paced meaning everybody together at the same pace set by the instructor, as if education is a conveyor belt where everybody moves together at the same time, which of course is not the case. Some students learn faster than others. Some students learn faster at one moment and more slowly at another moment. We have to give students an opportunity to adapt to their own rhythm, which you don't do when it's the instructor who sets it. So as I was moving these different parts of my course online, I was asking myself, are there things that are synchronous that are, let me first give you some examples. So for example, a lecture is synchronous and instructor-paced. A recorded lecture is asynchronous and instructor-paced. A lab would be synchronous, everybody does it at the same time, but on their own pace, self-paced. And homework, of course, is asynchronous and self-paced. So as I moved the different parts online, I thought, the more we can go from synchronous to asynchronous, and the more we can go from instructor-paced to student-paced, the more time we leave for us as instructors to help students there where it really matters. And in the process, we'll end up improving education. So that's it. I'll be online a little bit longer to answer a question. I want to thank LASPAO for organizing this and draw your attention to their new beautiful platform, Colab, which will probably have a recording of my webinar. And if you want additional resources, you can go to this URL, bit.ly/fliponline, which will have information on the motivation for this method, as well as implementation ideas, and also references to articles that provide the evidence. So thank you so much. It was wonderful to have all of you. I saw that there are many, many questions. I already see one person who is raising her hand, Catalina Cortez. Catalina, your microphone is unmuted. Please ask me whatever question you want. And if you want to ask it in Spanish, that's fine.
Thank you very much. I was just wondering, because I'm not sure if what I heard is correct. So you believe that we should be staying on this online learning, on this not necessarily asynchronous, but on digital learning. Is that what you said?
No, not necessarily, because I think we're all very social beings and we like to interact with each other in person rather than online. So I don't think that I'll be spending the rest of my career here in my family room giving webinars and teaching classes. No. However, I think that there are certain things that can be done online asynchronously and much better than they could be done in person. For example, Perusal is a great way of taking care of lectures so that we can get together with the students in the classroom and do exercises that don't bring them to just having read the material or heard about the material, but to actually be able to use the material to do something with it. So they bring to a higher point. Also, as I was moving my course online, I found that there were certain activities that were synchronous. In other words, we did them all together at the same time. Why? Simply because that's how we're trained to think, right? You have this hour for this class in this room, and therefore you're going to work together in this room. But I found that there are certain activities that were just much better done asynchronously, so that we can use the time together in the class much more productively and effectively. I just had never thought about it that way. And I trust that if you think about your own class and think, is it really necessary to do this, which I usually do in my classroom, with all the students together, or could they work on it individually, and then we could somehow bring them together either online or in the classroom and make much better use of time. And for me, for several aspects of my course, that was definitely the case. But no, I think there will always be a need for getting together. There are some very interesting models of online learning. One, the Minerva school, the Minerva College, which was meant to be an elite college. They have fantastic students. They get top students. So in their case, the students are together. There is a campus, and the campus moves around the world. So the students start in San Francisco, one semester in San Francisco, then they go to Sao Paulo for one semester, then they go to London, then they go to Singapore, then they go to Shanghai. So each semester is in a different location. And when the first cohort goes from San Francisco to Sao Paulo, another cohort is in San Francisco. So the students are spread out over the globe, and they become global citizens by actually taking advantage of the different cultural environments they're in. The teachers, however, are in the United States mostly, and they're teaching online. So their platform for teaching is an online platform. Even though the students are together, they're together in San Francisco, or they're together in Sao Paulo, or they're together in, so their social programs, their interactions is together, but a lot of the learning and interaction with the instructor is done online. That's one example. Another example is Western Governors University. I had never heard of this until 2 years ago. It's based in Utah. It was started, I think, about 19 years ago by governors of Western states like Colorado, Utah, California. And the idea was to radically change education and make it certificate-based and make it completely online. And interestingly enough, in a Gallup poll of well-being, that university scored among the highest in terms of future well-being of their graduates, showing that it really is possible to deliver good education in an online environment. But, you know, I'm sure there'll always be room. I mean, look at the Minerva College. The students are living together because they need that interaction together. And I think wherever possible, it's good for us to interact with our students. So I don't see students go away. But I think the old model of auditoria and lectures taking place in auditoria, I think it's time that that changes. You know, it's not about us being in front of a theater. It's about the students. I don't know if you have anybody here from Earth University in Costa Rica. I have never been there, would love to go. I was very impressed by a speech I heard from the president, I forgot his name now, who I heard give a speech at Olin College here, and about the project-based nature and the incredible intrinsic motivation of the students you have. So I see Julieta saying, yes, I don't know if that was because you are from Earth University, but I would love to hear your take on what you've heard today. Anybody else who wants to raise their hand? If you want to ask a question, open the participant list. So click on participants. And at the bottom is a little hand. Click on that hand if you want to ask a question. Adriana, I think, raised her hand. So Adriana, please unmute yourself and introduce yourself and ask a question.
Well, I am well, Sempotech University, who had to pass 100% online during this coronavirus crisis. And we were thinking about going further to take this opportunity to improve our distance learning and the students' experience. And so my question is about videos. Why don't you use videos and what's the name?
Right, in Perusal. Yes, yes. So first of all, thank you for that question, and thank you for joining us today here. I loved what you said in the beginning. You said that we would use this opportunity to go online, and I think so many people, even at my own institution, are seeing it as a challenge, as a problem to be, you know, let's hope this is over soon so we can go back to what we did before. So I have to applaud you for your and your institution for being so positive and for wanting to see this as an opportunity to change education, which is exactly the way I am thinking about. So and thank you also for asking this question, which is a very important one and one that I didn't get to spend enough time. So I actually started recording my lectures in 1990, so 30 years ago. I still have the VHS tapes, and I would make those tapes available to my students. And so that what happened when the internet was available, I digitized them and put them on the internet. And for a while I thought, you know what, I'm just not going to lecture anymore. I'm going to have the students watch the video. And what you find with video is that the student inherits the same passive behavior, right? I mean, when you're a student listening to a person speak, whether it's now online or in a classroom, you're essentially passive, right? You're sitting there and the information is coming at you and you can't stop the information to think about it. But you could raise your hand and you could say, Professor, could you please be quiet for 5 minutes? I need to think. But students don't do that, right? They don't stop you. When you watch a video, you could pause the professor without being embarrassed or embarrassing the professor, right? You could just hit the pause button. But it turns out, if you look at the data, students do not pause the video. Instead, they play it as fast as they can to finish it as quickly as they can, which means there is even less time to think. Now, when you read printed text, right? I'm sorry, I have a virtual background. Let me turn the virtual background off, because if I hold something in front, you don't see it. So let me turn the virtual background off here. So if you read text, right, you read, and if your mind wanders because you think, does this make sense? You stop reading. You automatically stop reading. You may read another sentence and then you realize, oh, I'm reading without thinking. So I think the difference between reading and watching is that in the reading, you're in control, whereas watching, the person presenting is in control. And therefore, there's more time to think when you read than when you watch. Also, if we have to take everything that we know and put it in video, it is going to be very expensive, because unlike printed text, video expires very quickly. If I look at a video that I made 5 or 10 years ago, I go, oh my God, it looks old. The clothing is different, the hairstyle is different, the computers in the background are different, everything is different. I can pick up a book that was published 50, 60, 100, 150 years ago, and it still looks relatively fresh, and it can much more easily be kept up to date. So I am a strong believer in printed information rather than visual information. Also, think about it. Our graduates, your students, my students, later on in their lives, in their professional lives, how are they going to maintain their professional knowledge? How are they going to expand their professional knowledge? The same way you and I do, not by watching YouTube videos. Maybe they're going to watch a YouTube video on how to fix a tire or how to bake a bread or how to, fix something. But for the things in their own disciplines, whether it's management or the humanities or art or sciences, it's mostly by reading. So training our students to read, I think, is a very important skill, a skill that we do not work on enough. That's sort of, in a little bit more detail, my thinking about reading versus video. Now, if you want, you can put video in Perusal. You can.
Yeah, eventually they could comment on what is said at the minute.
Yes.
That minute and second, and
yes.
But it is not integrated. It would not be integrated with the discussion in this software.
It would be a lot more work, because if you have the comment, then the other person has to go to 1 minute and 10 second listen and so on. So, but yes, and in fact there are a number of video annotation platforms, and we have a video annotation algorithm. We simply have not implemented it yet in Perusal, and for the reasons that I gave you. So I see that 2 more people have a hands up. Chris, you had your hand up, and then Flor Artiaga, and I also see Julieta Mazzola, who is saying that we pleasure to be at Earth. I'm going to take you up on that invitation at some point. I would love to visit. Chris, please unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Buenas, hello, Eric. Nice to meet you and all my classmates today.
Mucho gusto.
Okay, I will continue in Spanish because I am a teacher in the University Politécnica Internacional. Ok.
Sí.
Señor Eric, hay una situación y coincido con usted en el asunto que nosotros a partir del COVID-19 ya la vida ya no va a ser igual. Esto porque hemos venido a través de una centena de años bajo el modelo de sentar a los estudiantes en filas, en columnas.
Okay, in my case, the audio went in and out, so I'm going to ask somebody to translate it for me. Chris, wait a second. Angelica, can you translate the question for me?
Profesor Chris, pudiera, porque yo tomé parte de su comentario de que hemos venido enseñando de manera muy tradicional, sentando a los estudiantes en fila, y ahora la situación dramática nos cambia. ¿Cuál es su pregunta?
Sí, la pregunta, además del comentario, es que el sistema digamos, a nivel mundial, ¿cree él que va a cambiar posteriormente al COVID o va a seguir igual?
Oh, so he's asking, Eric, if you think that worldwide, do you think the situation is going to change in terms of education, right? The way universities educate is going to change or will continue as it was before? What is your opinion on that?
Well, if we use the past as an indication of the future, things do not look very good, right? I mean, look, about 1,000 years ago, universities started to teach by lecturing in Bologna in Italy and other institutions in Europe. 400 years later, the book was invented. The book is a great way of transferring knowledge. But instead of telling students, read the book, the professors at the universities in medieval Europe continued to lecture. And now we are in the 21st century, and there are many ways to transfer information, and most people are still lecturing. So I think education is probably one of the most conservative and least innovative sectors of human endeavor and human society that you can imagine. But I don't want to be too pessimistic. I do think that what is happening now is unique. It's really unique. It's unique in the sense that we have all, you, who is probably among the more innovative people teaching, otherwise you would not have come to this webinar, but also all of our colleagues, the colleagues that until, you can't convince to do anything else but lecturing in front of the classroom, they're all of a sudden forced to take their class and put it online. And as they do that, they discover that lecturing online is simply not as effective as doing things in a better way. So I hope that this incredible shock, in a sense, that the educational system has had will help move things forward a little bit faster. And therefore, I think that, I know that if I move, even for myself, if I move my course back to campus, there are certain things that will not change back to the way they were before. And I hope that that will be true for most courses. And maybe we've moved the educational system forward a little bit faster than it would usually have. Everywhere around the world, from China to Latin America to Europe and the US. But who knows, we'll see. I'll talk to you 10, 20 years from now, Chris, and then we'll have a drink and we'll discuss and we'll see. Flora, so thank you, Chris, for the answer. Flora Atiaga.
Yes. Hold on a second. Okay, there you go.
And you can ask in Spanish, that's fine.
Okay, good. No. Bueno, muchas gracias por compartir con nosotros todo este conocimiento, que creo que es muy oportuno en este momento y para el futuro. Tengo duda con respecto a criterios de evaluación en el uso de la plataforma. Usted hablaba sobre el algoritmo que utiliza el sistema, digamos, Imagino que para lo que es controlar interacción, participación, generación de preguntas, respuesta de otras preguntas, como parte de esos criterios. Pero me gustaría saber si difieren mucho la construcción de los criterios de evaluación y de qué manera. Porque la forma tradicional es como, bueno, una nota para un examen o para una tarea, para qué sé yo, unos puntos de participación en clase que se reflejan en trabajos específicos. ¿Cómo se trabaja evaluación desde esta plataforma?
So your question, if I understood it correctly, is about, how do you carry out assessment? Thank you, first of all, so much for bringing up assessment. I think assessment, educators in general do not think enough about assessment, including me. For many, many years, I focused on the approach to teaching, on making teaching more interactive, but I didn't really think about assessment. And put yourself in the shoes of a student. If you're a student, what is the most important part of any course? The most important part is the assessment, because the assessment is what is going to determine the student's progress. So from a student perspective, it's not how the course is taught that is important, but how the students are assessed. So perusal is not meant, nothing that I showed you today is meant as an assessment. It should not be an assessment. It's too early in the learning process. So I have a very different approach to assessment from the standard exams. And if you want to have more information about that, that's a whole other talk. But luckily the talk has been recorded. So if you go online, there is a talk if you go to my website, which is ericmasseur.com, you will find under, I think, videos, a talk called Assessment, the Silent Killer of Learning. It's a very provocative title, Assessment, the Silent Killer. I'm typing it here in the chat, the Silent Killer of Learning. Because I think that with a lot of the standard assessment, we essentially assess very superficial skills, not the type of skills we really want our students to develop. And also, we essentially give them an opportunity to take shortcuts, including cheating, which don't do anybody any good. So I totally agree with you. Assessment is truly important. Nothing that I presented today incorporated assessment, and I would not use perusal or peer instruction as an assessment method. The assessment has to be separate. And if you want to know how I do it in my classroom, and I've been able to put that online as well, please watch that YouTube video, Assessment, the Silent Killer of Learning. Thank you so much for asking that, because, most people, they care about teaching, and they don't think about assessment. The student thinks about assessment, and not about teaching. We need to bring that together. So thank you for that absolutely wonderful question. We're going to take thank you. We're going to take one final question, because Katya has had her hand up for a while, and then we'll close this webinar. I'm so happy to see that there are still 83 of you here online 2 hours later. So that's wonderful. Katya, where are you from, and how can we help you?
I'm from Costa Rica. I am photography teacher, so I'm a little bit preoccupied.
Do you want to ask a question in Spanish? That's fine. En español.
Okay. Muchos de mis estudiantes, ante la respuesta de plataformas asincrónicas y la modalidad de aula invertida, muchas veces, ante muchos de los compañeros, decían que se sentían como abandonados, porque digamos que escuchar videos de cómo se retoca una foto o cómo haces un esquema de iluminación, que obviamente son tareas muy prácticas, pues no era lo mismo como hacer las prácticas en el estudio, obviamente, cara a cara. ¿Qué recomendaciones nos puede dar, por ejemplo, para quitarles un poquito de ese tipo de ansiedad, porque hay muchos, aparte de que se quedaron sin equipos y no tenían tantas cosas, tienen también el problema de que aunque logramos darles los programas que ellos tenían en la universidad, muchas de sus computadoras no corren los programas tan actuales, entonces digamos que de esa parte lidiamos con lo que ellos tienen versus lo que podrían aprender. Bueno, obviamente podemos buscar software libre y cosas más así, que eso fue lo que hicimos, pero digamos que hay muchos estudiantes que podrían sentir, y sobre todo hablando con algunos, de que no son capaces, digamos, de cumplir con las expectativas de un curso porque no cuentan con todo, como el mejor internet, con las mejores computadoras, como tenían, por ejemplo, en la universidad. Yo lo que les he dicho es, digamos, en estos momentos explota la creatividad, pero digamos que hay algunos a los que tal vez hay que jalar un poquito. ¿Qué nos recomienda para eso?
Well, this is the perfect question to end this webinar with. Thank you for asking that. And I totally agree, right? In fact, I think I made that point at the beginning, right? If you ask students, we sent our students home, they're at home. They're alone because they can't go outside. They don't meet with the other students, with their friends. And now if we ask them to watch a recorded lecture online and to all the work, they're alone. What I presented today, however, allows you to break that solitude, because in Perusal, they're not just reading alone. They're answering each other's question. They're interacting. They're interacting asynchronously, but they are interacting. You're not completely alone. If there's something you don't understand and you ask a question, your friends help you, or some students say, yeah, I have that same question. And then for the synchronous part with Zoom, I don't know whether you use Zoom, but everybody seems...
We use Meet.
Okay. So if you put students in breakout rooms, you can do it in Microsoft Teams, you can do it in Zoom. I don't know if you can do it in Meet because I haven't used it, but maybe you can have different rooms for different groups of students. So I think what you say is so important. We have to fight the loneliness of the students, and we have to make sure that what we offer them are activities where they interact with each other rather than passively watching us, right? And I hope that the tools that you saw today will give you an ability to actually try to get students to interact with each other. That was the whole purpose of this webinar. But I totally agree with you. We should avoid activities where the student's completely alone. It might work for really highly motivated students, but most students are not really highly motivated. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you, all of you. I look forward to visiting Costa Rica in the future when the world is normal again. Until then, goodbye.